I have a cool show today. We're talking about art and music, and we have a live performance with our 3:30 guests, so be sure to stick around for that. But up first, I'm sitting here with my good friend Stephen Pennell. He is coordinator for the Urban Arts and Culture, thank you. It just slipped my mind, I knew it. Urban Arts and Culture program at URI Providence. There's a new art exhibit that is opening today, and it is called Visible Cloth, Invisible Bodies, and Stephen is here to talk about it.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. The Arts and Culture program at the URI Providence campus has monthly exhibits and performances on different topics of social justice and on diversity. And this project is very exciting and very different. We always do something special for Black History Month starting in January through February. And this project came to me. There's a group of people who've been working together for quite a long time doing research on the history of Rhode Island and slavery and also the Industrial Revolution. So this project came from the Committee for the Commemoration and Study of Slavery in Rhode Island. And so this follows, many people know some things about slavery, some things about the planting and harvesting of cotton in the South, and about the Industrial Revolution, which started in Rhode Island.
Right.
But very few people know that Rhode Island was connected to all of that. That in fact there were merchants in Rhode Island who had ships, and they would go to Africa to get the slaves, and they would bring them through Rhode Island. In some cases, slaves were kept in Rhode Island, and then some of those people actually had their own plantation in the South, and they would the slaves would harvest the cotton, which was a really, really nasty operation. By the time that the cotton was harvested, the plants were dry and brittle and sharp, and they would cut you, and they had to stand out in the broiling sun,
right,
with no water, and just pick cotton. And then the cotton was brought back to the north, sometimes to these same people's mills, and because there were mills all over southern New England and heavily in Rhode Island for textiles. And so the cotton had to be carded and made into fabric. And actually the mill process was very brutal as well. Primarily white immigrants, because when the Italians came, they weren't welcome in the mills, and African Americans were not welcome in the mills on the whole. But people would have their children go and work in the mills because some of the work required small bodies, and they were long hours, terrible conditions.
Right.
So these same people were making money in each step along the way. So this exhibit, which has photographs, and it also has some amazing images that have been painted by Deborah Baronis, a Rhode Island artist, on huge, oversized, bigger than life-sized kind of gauze fabric. And the images are kind of ghostly images that are just floating in the space.
It's really beautiful. I've seen some photographs of it on the artist's website herself, and I'm sure the impact of actually being there and seeing it, because they are so large and larger than life, it must be breathtaking.
It really is, and then in addition to photographs, large photographs, and the images that Deborah Baronis has created, we also have cotton plants. So you get
we had a little here too.
Yes, yeah.
Kind of picked them over.
Yeah, I brought some pieces that didn't make it, and some cotton plants were kind of, you usually see the sort of chest high, but some cotton plants were really, really high. I've learned all of these things as I do with
Studying
each
up
project.
on this project, yeah.
Yes, and they were very sharp, and the plants were dead by the time they were picked. And then we also have some pieces of mill equipment from the Slater Mill, who kindly collaborated with this project, and they let us have the equipment. So I was hauling the gear last setting up the exhibit. So it's quite an experience, just sort of traveling through some of the elements of the shipping of slaves, body to body in the lower decks of ships, to Rhode Island, through Rhode Island to the plantations, the picking of cotton, and then the creation of fabric. And of course, there was the nice fabric. We have nice fabric, I have nice fabric, but then slaves actually, there was slave cloth, which was really nasty. It was very coarse, worse than burlap.
Oh, wow.
And their clothes were just kind of sack skirts and blouses and sack pants and shirts, one size fits all-ish. And they were cinched, with a rope. So that was what they wore in all of this labor that went into this process.
Yeah. It's very interesting because a lot of people who have grown up here know that the Industrial Revolution is attributed to our area, Slater Mill, and all these things, and it's a positive thing, but you don't think always about the price that was paid in order to make that happen. And it seems that this is sort of opening the window into what actually had to be done at that time in order to make this happen, how painful and terrible the conditions were, and the use of slaves in order to make it happen, the use of child labor to make it happen, and it's sort of not pleasant.
It isn't. There's a picture of a little girl standing on a box because she was too small to do the particular job that she was required to do, and there are children were utilized, and they had to go underneath the machinery because as a thread would break, they would have to attach the next spool, but in the process your hair could get caught.
Oh my goodness.
Arms got severed, and just long hours, 7 days a week. The institution of schools, Sunday school, was eventually they got so that they didn't have to work on Sundays, and so that they learned to read and also learned about the Bible. And so schooling was not an automatic thing for the average person, and then safety issues, and there were mills would catch on fire. They oiled the floor to keep the dust down. It was a nasty environment, but it caused fire because the machinery, which started out running by water power, but it was still gears moving, could create sparks, and then you've got all this thread, all this fabric,
all this flammable,
and wooden floors and everything. So it was not a positive environment any more than picking cotton was. I had a very interesting experience I want to share. Somebody that I work with was walking along the hallway, and when he was a child, he had to work with his parents and grandparents picking cotton. And of course they weren't slaves, but they were working in these horrible conditions. So this is, while we're looking at the 19th century, we're not looking at 18th century, which is where it began, but even in the 20th century, this is not a real pleasant job to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall this subject matter is not very pleasant, and it's painful for a lot of people to think about slavery and to think about how much Rhode Island was a part of this practice. And so how do you expect people to react when they see this exhibit, or how do you hope they react when they see this exhibit? Do you expect it to be painful for people?
Difficult. I don't think it's necessarily painful. It's not a gory exhibit, and it's kind of ghostly, but it is provocative. It does make you think. It is quite shocking to realize the involvement of our state in this whole process, and it's a learning exhibit. It's not full of text that you have to read like this is a book.
Right.
You really experience it
Yeah.
in a way that is visceral.
Yeah.
And I think it makes you stop and think, and then you think today, right, there are other places in the world, there are other situations where people are being treated inhumanely. So, all right, this isn't happening in the way that it did, but where is it happening now? And what can we do to make a difference?
And I mean, it's crazy to think that in 2018, the subject of racism is being brought up every single day.
Absolutely.
And you would think that we would be farther away from this than we actually are at this point. So I imagine that adds a little extra weight
Absolutely.
to the exhibit at this point in our...
And maybe it's fortunate that this is in our laps right now.
Right.
Sometimes we forget when it's something that's happening halfway across the globe, it removes us. But so our conversations right now, while difficult, are important for us to make change here and also impact change across the globe, because it's a smaller world today than it was 150 years ago.
Yes, and it is nice to have this opportunity to, in a way, pay homage to the people that actually built the industry in our country. Like invisible bodies, they weren't invisible, you know,
No.
They are invisible to our history in some ways because we
Right.
don't like to think about it. But these are the people, these are the human beings that actually made this happen.
And by exhibiting and talking about these people and giving them a name
Yeah.
and sharing their history, they become visible.
Right.
I do want to mention that in addition to the exhibit, which is on the first and second floor of the URI Providence campus, 80 Washington Street, which is just up the street.
Our neighbors
yes.
at URI Providence.
There's also two wonderful events. They're quite different from each other. One is on the 3rd of February from 1 to 5. There'll be some presentations and performance by Sylvia Soares.
What type of performance is it? I was wondering, is it like a reading or a...
No, it's a full performance. She's personifying an actual individual whose story she'll share, and her Rhode Island woman and her connection.
Wow.
And then on the 8th of February at 6:30 there'll be a panel of scholars to talk about, and then there'll be open discussion to talk about other aspects of slavery in Rhode Island and in the United States.
Very interesting. A lot of opportunity to get involved, it sounds like. A lot of opportunity to sort of have an interactive experience with the exhibit.
Absolutely. We hope that teachers will bring their students and parents will bring their children so that you can experience this. The building is open from Monday through Thursday, 9 to 9. I say 9 to 9, but it's actually open before and open later. And then Friday and Saturday until 5 o'clock. We're closed on Sundays. So come through. It's free. All of these events are free, and we would welcome students to come through as a group or individual.
Yeah, it runs from starting today through February 22nd, so a lot of opportunity to check it out. And also, you can check out the special events, and everything is available at the URI website. I imagine we'll have that posted on GoLocalProv.com if you want more information. Stephen, thank you so much for being here today. It sounds like a really interesting exhibit. I can't wait to check it out. Thank you so much for talking about it.
It was a pleasure, and thank you for having me. Please come down.
Come and check it out. It is called, again, Visible Cloth, Invisible Bodies, presented by URI Providence. Thank you again, Stephen Pennell. I'm going to take a quick break to get set up for my next guest, so stick around.